Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is January 29th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. With so much going on and the fact that I was away for the past couple of days, the title of today's podcast is It's Only January. It's only January. We still have a couple more days remaining in the first month of 2020. We're going to talk about market performance. We're going to talk about the Federal Reserve because they wrapped up their two-day Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, meeting today. We're going to talk about impeachment because the senators were able to ask questions. They had to write down their questions, and they were submitted to the Chief Justice, John Roberts, who was presiding over the trial in the United States Senate. He then would read the questions aloud to the respective side, whether that be the House managers or the counsel for the president, and sometimes it was a question for both parties, and they split their time. We have the USMCA, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement signed. It is still not entirely finalized. It is still waiting approval, I believe, by one of the remaining parties. So it is not in full effect, but it is one step closer. It's only January. Don't forget, it was only a few weeks ago we were talking about Iran and the Iranian escalation and then the de-escalation and then all of the, their targets, they were bombing Iraqi airfields that house U.S. troops, and there was nobody hurt, right? Nobody was hurt, nobody was killed, no harm, no foul. Well, as time passes, you start to learn a little bit more of the truth, and I tell you guys here all the time, when it comes to war or almost anything regarding the government, the truth is always the first casualty. Well, now we know that there were at least 34 U.S. personnel who were injured. TBI, traumatic brain injury, was sustained during that missile attack. That was a week or so ago, that number 34. Now it's up to 50. Now it's up to 50 U.S. service members suffering from some sort of traumatic brain injury, concussion, or the like. Now, thank God nobody's dead. But this is what I'm telling you. Everything that you hear from this government, and again, I am not singling out Donald Trump here. Believe me, this is the government. He just happens to be the president right now. He's more or less, he's a puppet. He's just like all the other ones. Believe me when I tell you, this is all divide and conquer. Drain the swamp, he hasn't even drained the kiddie pool. This is all propaganda. This is all divide and conquer. If it keeps us out of war, I'll take it. But I actually believe that this is marching us closer and closer to some sort of conflict in the Middle East. Yes, another one. We also have a Middle East peace deal. Do we? The United States and Israel seem to be on board with it. But what about that third party, the Palestinians? Were they in the White House just the other day applauding this deal? No, they weren't. So how great do you think this is going to be? This is akin to President Xi not signing up, or not showing up, and not signing the Phase 1 trade deal, which is supposed to be fantastic for both sides. It's supposed to be monumental. Well, then don't you think, ladies and gentlemen, if it was such a monumental deal for both countries, so historic, so unprecedented, so fantastic, that the president of China, President Xi, would also have shown up at the Oval Office for that signing ceremony, or at least somewhere else. Neutral ground. If Trump doesn't want to go to China or Xi doesn't want to come to Washington, so be it. Find somewhere else. Go somewhere else. That didn't happen, did it? No, it didn't. That didn't happen. And in the course of that trade war, well, if you pay attention to this podcast, you know how much economic loss took place. How much was, I guess you could say, sacrificed. And most of it is not going to come back. The deal got us back to where we were 2 years ago before the whole shenanigan began. And now Donald Trump wants to pat himself on the back and congratulate himself, because that's what he does, and pretend that none of that ever happened, that none of these farmers went bankrupt, that tens of billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars didn't go to bailing out farmers, No, that was nothing. Nothing to see here, folks. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We don't want to pay attention to the truth now, do we? We don't want to pay attention to the facts, to the data. No. Just listen to me, Thunder Thumps, and my Twitter account, that this is the best deal ever. Well, it isn't. And it's so fantastic that the president of China didn't even show up to sign it. So now, again, going back to the Middle East peace deal. The Palestinians already denouncing it. It's not going to work. They weren't in the room in the in the White House the other day. Neither was, at least this is some reporting, neither was the ambassador to Egypt nor the ambassador to Jordan. Two major political brokers within the Middle East who have agreements with Israel. They were not in there. So you would think, at least somewhat more from the Muslim world, the Arab world, that those individuals would have been there to support this deal if it was really supposed to be revolutionary, and I think they're calling it the deal of the century. I mean, it's just, you've got to continue to one-up everything, right? It's always the best. USMCA is the best. No, Phase 1 is the best. Well, Phase 1 isn't even complete, so to speak, because we have no idea if the Chinese are even going to make good on the whole thing. Most likely they won't, because there is nothing that is going to prevent them from saying, yeah, we're not going to make good on this. Why? Because trade deals don't work like that. It is not force. It is not force. It's simply, here's a quota, here's a tariff if it doesn't work, That's all it is. You cannot compel an individual to purchase something they don't want. If they want to buy a similar product or the same product from another country, they are allowed to do so. You don't just sign these things and presto, economic growth just takes off. This isn't a launch button. It's not how things work. And I don't know if Donald Trump doesn't understand that, if the people around him don't understand that, or they're afraid to change his thinking on it because that's what he thinks. I don't know. Either is unacceptable. But that's where we are. This is what we're dealing with here. Okay? So that's the Middle East peace deal. We also have, of course, the coronavirus. We've been talking about this. I'm sure you've seen many more headlines in the news and some news stories on it, no question about it. Something that was supposed to be contained in a city of about 10 to 11 million people in Wuhan in China is now expanded to a quarantine zone, pretty much the population the size of California. Nothing to see here, folks. We have everything under control. You now have major airlines around the world ending their flights to and from China. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So that's going to put a big damper on any type of economic growth as well. But of course, the health is the first and foremost thing that everybody should be concerned about. We do not want this thing to spread, although it is in several countries. There is still a lot of uncertainty as to exactly where this came from. There was some belief and speculation that it was coming from snakes. Others believe that it's coming from bats. Could be either one, could be something else. Time will tell. These researchers, they will discover where it came from. I believe that. Whether we're told the truth is another question. Again, it's going to be the same song and dance. Because WHO, the World Health Organization, the other day or a week ago already, said, well, this isn't necessarily an international problem. But now they're meeting once again to basically say otherwise. It is a concern because it's so in so many different places. Again, folks, it's all about the headlines. It's all propaganda. So we got a Middle East peace deal, perhaps. We have a coronavirus, perhaps a pandemic. Let's hope this doesn't happen, but it could. We have earthquakes taking place where they typically don't take place, as in Puerto Rico, and they're still dealing with aftershocks. Yet a major earthquake, a 7.6, 7.7 earthquake off the coast of Cuba and Jamaica, causing some concerns and a possibility that there was going to be some sort of tsunami. Now, thank God that did not happen, but you had many, many other islands in that region feel aftershocks. I think some of the vibrations of the earthquake were even felt as far away in Florida for that matter. So we have a Middle East peace deal. We have earthquakes taking place where they typically don't. We have a possible pandemic. We have global protests. We have massive fires taking place in Australia, and of course they continue to happen in the United States as well, particularly in California. And we have, do you know this? There's a huge locust a huge locust infestation in swarm taking place in eastern Africa. It can travel up to 60 to 90 miles a day. They pretty much float with the wind is what they do. Resources there are not enough to stop it. They are pretty much destroying everything in their sight. I read an article the other day. If this swarm can continue to sustain itself, meaning there's enough crops and they're not killed off, if they can sustain themselves to or through the month of March, this thing could grow exponentially because they're going to have a wetter climate, so there's going to be probably rain that can produce obviously more crops, give these locusts the opportunity to mate and reproduce and just grow by leaps and bounds exponentially. So if this is not quashed, there's going to be some problems in Africa as if these poor people don't have enough to deal with. So a Middle East peace deal perhaps. Locusts, earthquakes, a possible pandemic, fires, and global protests. Now, I don't know about you. I went to a Catholic high school, and let me tell you something, folks. Checking all of those things off, something's cooking. All right? Something's brewing. That's all I'm saying. Look into it. Middle East peace deal, earthquakes, coronavirus, fires, global protests, and locusts. What else are we waiting for? Oh, yeah, potentially war. Well, you know, we're ready for it, aren't we? We've been spending like it's going out of style on our defense, haven't we? On a military-industrial complex. Why would we spend all that money? Where's it going to? What are we doing? Thousands and thousands of U.S. forces in the Middle East. Getting ready for what? What are we getting ready for? Especially when the president wants to say he has a campaign promise to bring everybody home. Then why are you sending more to the Middle East? The more people you put in that situation, the more possibilities there are for something to go wrong. If you don't have American forces there, American forces in the Middle East can't get killed. You understand? If you got 10,000, then you got 10,000 that could potentially get killed or wounded. You get what I'm saying? This is logical. Yeah, well, you got to be the tough guy. You got to deter the threats. Oh, yeah, that's been working for the past 20, 30 years, hasn't it? Oh, of course, yeah. Just send the U.S. forces over there, and it'll be a deterrence to all of this. Oh, really? Where have you been for the past 20-some-odd years? Any end in sight? No, not at all. Trillions of dollars spent, where did it go? Well, it's not accounted for. Ask the Pentagon. They're not going to give you an answer because they don't have one. How many thousands of lives ruined, destroyed, killed, ended? How many tens of thousands wounded? Hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East who have become refugees, lost their towns, their livelihoods, their friends, their family, their countrymen. Oh, yeah, just put the Americans over there and it'll deter all of this chaos. Really? What are you smoking? Let me know. So maybe ignorance is bliss. Maybe I'll join you. Market performance today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gaining 12 points, flat. The S&P 500 giving back 5 points, flat. The NASDAQ 100 up 11 points, relatively flat. Federal Reserve leaving interest rates unchanged, staying at 1.5 to 1.75%, as was expected by the market. Although the market would just love a continuation of lower interest rates. And of course, nobody could be happier than Donald Trump if that was the case. And of course, he was tweeting at them, like he always does, that he wants lower interest rates, that he wants negative interest rates, quantitative easing, the whole kit and caboodle. All of it. And if the Federal Reserve had done that earlier, the Dow would be up an additional 10,000 points. Maybe it'd be down 10,000 points. Maybe if the Federal Reserve didn't do what they did for the past, since September at least, the Dow could be down 10,000. I mean, the president is walking a very fine line, and he has been for quite a long time. If he wants to point the Federal Reserve out as being the bad guy, I'm perfectly fine with that. I want the Federal Reserve to be abolished. But if the Federal Reserve is going to continue to do these policies that continue to inflate an ever-increasing bubble in asset prices, i.e. the stock market, and that's what Donald Trump wants, then how can he blame the Federal Reserve if and when something goes wrong? You get what I'm saying? because he's not going to take responsibility for it. There's no way in hell. He takes credit for all of the things that are good or appear to be good. Anything that is bad or appears to be bad is somebody else's fault. Again, this is terrible leadership. Terrible. The analogy I like to give this audience is, imagine you're a infantryman and the general sends you into battle. If you win, he takes all the credit. If you lose the battle, he blames you. How many hills are you going to want to charge under that idiot? Not too many, I bet. Well, that's exactly what this president is. That's how he operates. It is pathetic leadership. Anybody who operates in that manner is pathetic at being a leader. Period. There's no excuse for it. None whatsoever. But that's how he operates. That's the stock market. We have the Japanese market down 1.74% at the time of this podcast. We have the Hong Kong market down 2.5% as well, off of escalating concerns of the coronavirus. We have no idea what's true, what's false. None. Because now we have to take a lot of this information as gospel coming from the Chinese Communist Party. We do not believe the Chinese Communist Party. Okay? I have no doubt that there is a serious virus taking place in China and elsewhere around the world. What I don't believe are the numbers, particularly the numbers that are coming out of China. I do not believe they have this thing under control. And in fact, they sort of shooed us, the United States, away with the CDC because we were going to send our professionals over there to help them. Centers for Disease Control, okay? Doesn't get much better than them. Believe me, we have some very sharp and talented scientists and researchers in this country, thank God. Believe me when I tell you. Okay, so China sort of poo-pooed us a little bit ago. Now, supposedly, we're going over there. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the Chinese don't have things under control. And when you have a country with 1.4 billion people, any delay of getting the right people on the job could result in God only knows how many deaths or contractions of this virus. You get what I'm saying? You got to put aside the ego. We got to start working as one race, the human race. You understand what I'm saying here? We got to rise above which is not going to happen anytime soon in this country. It's just not going to happen. I don't imagine it's going to happen anytime soon anywhere on the face of this planet. The only leaders that exist on the face of this planet are the people protesting around the world in their respective countries. Because they're fed up with everything. They're fed up with the campaign slogans. They're fed up with the charismatic politicians who can rally the troops and can rally a base. But they're basically rendered ineffective when it comes to management, when it comes to actually getting things done for the better. They're sick and tired of it. They're sick and tired of the nepotism, the fraud, the corruption, the abuses of power. Everywhere. Everywhere. You know, when you have countries and people around the world who cannot tolerate a 1% increase in the price of their fuel, or a 50-cent increase in the fare to get on a bus or on a subway train, and people, they lose it. That's all it takes, is what I'm telling you. They are at their rope's end. They have nothing to lose. And a lot of these countries, unfortunately, they are under governments where they're going to shoot these people. And not only are they going to shoot them, they're going to kill them. And that's what's happening. How desperate do people need to be to risk their lives, knowingly that that's going to happen? Knowing that could happen. You understand what I'm saying? You understand the gravity of this situation? You understand why I've been saying here for months that this is not transitory, that this is history in the making? You understand what I'm saying to you? Put aside the politics and the partisanship. Put aside the blame that it's only the fault of the Democrats or it's only the fault of the Republicans. It's both of their faults. And it's ours too, because we continue to elect these idiots time after time after time. You know, I told you last week, I felt compelled in regards to this impeachment inquiry and now the trial in the Senate. I felt compelled to send an email to one of my Republican senators. I have one Republican, I have one Democrat. The Democrat is going to most likely continue to vote for a fairer and open trial, which would require new witnesses and more information to be released. So I didn't send anything to him. Not that I agree with his policies on nearly anything, because I don't. But at least on this, I think he's going in the right direction. My Republican senator, on the other hand, wasn't so certain. And so I felt compelled to send him an email. And I stated this to you guys last week, and I'm going to reiterate it here again. For those of you who have been following this podcast, I hope you have a better understanding of who I am. I'm not a partisan. I'm not for the Republicans. I don't like them. I'm not for the Democrats. I don't like them either. I'm a libertarian. Felt compelled to write my senator an email. Because what I am after is truth and justice. And what I told my senator, of course I'm paraphrasing, is put your country and your oath ahead of your party. I am sick and tired, and I did write that, I am sick and tired of all of this partisanship, of putting party before country. Sick and tired of it. I said, let the whole truth be known. And what I say here to this audience all the time, I said to my senator. If the evidence shows that the president is guilty, then convict and remove him. If exculpatory evidence is released as a result of new witnesses and or documentation, then acquit. But as it stands today, Senator, there is damning evidence against the president that he abused his power. And the fact that other witnesses are not coming forward and that other documentation or any documentation from the White House is being released, well, then that really shows Article 2 of this impeachment trial. Obstruction of justice. And now, you have had the asinine, ass-backwards argument over the weekend, continuing to this day and today, because there were impeachment questions from the senators, as I said at the top of this podcast, from the president's defense counsel, particularly from professor, criminal defense attorney, TV lawyer, goes on all the stations, Alan Dershowitz, maybe more appropriately named dipshits, after this argument, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You do not need to be a legal scholar to say this guy is off his rocker. You do not need to be a United States historian to understand that his argument is ridiculous on its face. Basically stating that an abuse of power is not an impeachable offense. That should be it. You should be laughing right there if it wasn't so sad for what the implications of this means if Donald Trump is acquitted based off of this argument. It would have been a completely different story if the defense counsel for the president came out and said what the president did was not an impeachable offense. This was not an abuse of power. That's a completely different argument. They could have made that, but they didn't. They had to go even further. They had to say, no, listen. It's almost an admission that he did it, and it says, who cares? And in fact, you can't do anything about it because he's the president of the United States. He's basically made all of these people drink the Trump Kool-Aid. I mean, there's no other way to explain this. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, this should be so simple. This should be so self-evident. An abuse of power is not an impeachable offense? Are you kidding me? Then what remedy do we have? We have to wait for an election? What if it's in his second term? We just got to let him run roughshod for 4 years? And again, I don't necessarily mean Donald Trump. Because all you Republicans out there, you're going to be happy when a Democrat becomes the president, and now their precedent exists that guy can get away with anything, do whatever he wants. You're going to be okay if Bernie Sanders gets in there? You're going to be okay if Joe Biden gets in there, or Elizabeth Sanders? Or Elizabeth Warren, rather? You're going to be okay with that? She can get in there. Hey, they just acquitted Donald Trump. Now I'm president. I can do whatever I want. You can't do anything about it. I got the Justice Department saying they can't indict me for a crime. And I have the United States Senate setting a precedent that says I can abuse my power and there's not a damn thing anybody can do about it. Doesn't that sound like a dictator? Doesn't that sound like a king or a queen to you? Isn't that exactly why the Constitution was created? And then this idiot, Dershowitz, dipshits, whatever you want to call him, goes out there and he says, well, you know, a lot of people are asking questions and talking about how we took this whole impeachment process from Great Britain. Well, they don't even have that anymore. And over there, it was a process about going after low-level people. That's not what we do here. Basically making the arguments for the House Democrats. Do you think when people are speaking on TV, or do you just, yep, yeah, George, yep, which way did he go? Which way did he go? Do you think when you read an article, do you think about what it says or you just read the words? Do you stop and puzzle, well, does that make sense? Or is somebody trying to get something over on me here? It's not that difficult. Talking about impeachment going after low-level people in Great Britain. That's not what took place here, Mr. Dershowitz. All these impeachment cases that have been cited from both sides are talking about presidents and federal judges. Does that sound like low-level members of the government to you? No, because they're not. They're at the highest levels, because that's what our founders did. That's what they wanted. There has to be a remedy. There has to be a check to the power of the executive. There has to be a check to the power of all branches of government. If the president is acquitted on this defense, it's gone. The Constitution has been shredded. It's been obliterated. It's been set on fire, whatever analogy, whatever terms you want to use. It's gone. It's gone. And oh, the irony that it's going to be the conservative party, because conservative means you conserve, protect, and defend the original documents. It's going to be the conservative party that shreds it. This is as simple as it gets. I don't understand how people can even buy into this. What check is there on a president? Whether it's his first term or second. Can't indict him for a crime, so that's gone. And he can abuse his power if he is acquitted under this precedent. Potential precedent. You're okay with this? I mean, seriously, are you? I'm not okay with it. This is absolute power. This is absolute control. We have the president on record saying that Article 2 of the Constitution, I can do whatever I want. He believes this. As I have been stating here for months during this impeachment inquiry and now the trial, I said the ultimate question you have to ask is will the president do something like this again? The answer is unequivocally yes, he will. He'll feel even more emboldened to do God knows what. And who's going to check him? Who's going to keep him in check? Absolutely nobody. And this article, or these arguments back and forth between both sides, especially on the president's defense teams, talking about all of these subpoenas and executive privilege. Executive privilege was never asserted. You have these subpoenas. Yeah, well, where they have to go to court, and then how long is that going to take? And, senators, there's other business of the Senate that needs to be done, and we can't be tied up in the court system for too long. So don't you just want to acquit? Don't you just want to get this over with? That's the best argument you can do. Basically threatening senators, saying, look, we're going to run this thing. You're going to be sitting here on your rear ends for hours at a day, weeks, months on end until this gets litigated through the court system. Don't mind that you have a constitutional duty to be there. No. Just worry about how much time is spent. Like these people are doing anything for the benefit of this country. And then Dershowitz comes up with the argument, well, it's all, the quid pro quo and all this, that, and the other. The president, if he thinks it's in the public interest, he can do whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants, because clearly any politician is going to think they're the best thing since sliced bread, and sliced bread is good for the public, therefore I'm good for the public. So you can't impeach him for that. This is a real argument, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't heard it, you can go find it. And then you're going to say, this is the best that the president can do. This is the argument that these people have to make or to defend him. Because they didn't use nearly as much time as the House managers did, and they don't have to. And again, sometimes brevity is better, sometimes less is more. But of course, their argument was all about the hysteria. It was all about Donald Trump's Twitter feed for all intents and purposes. It was all about distractions and red herrings and going down the rabbit hole. Not about the facts, not about the accusations against him. Pay attention to this shiny object. Don't pay attention to the facts of the case because they are basically tasked with defending the indefensible. And it's not their fault. And it's not Adam Schiff's fault as much as I don't like him and many of you probably don't as well. It's not Jerry Nadler's fault. It's not Chuck Schumer's fault. It's not Nancy Pelosi's fault. It's Donald J. Trump's fault. He is the one who ordered this drug deal, if you will. He is the one who put Rudy Giuliani in charge of some sort of parallel policy. And it really wasn't even foreign policy because you have notes and articles out there from Giuliani saying, I am reaching out to this person and that person on behalf of Donald Trump, not in an official capacity as a spokesperson or a member of the U.S. government, but rather as a personal attorney for the President of the United States. You know, if everything was above board and Donald Trump was truly concerned with corruption and the Bidens, again, why didn't he look into it in 2017 and 2018? Why did he wait until Joe Biden was a political rival in 2019 to do it? Makes it look like it was political, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. It's because it is political. It's because that's what the president was doing. He wanted to influence this election. Wasn't concerned about corruption. If he was, he could have looked into it in 2017 and 2018. And if you want to say, okay, well, you know, his hands were tied, he was doing that. Okay. Then why didn't he use the legal channels that are afforded to him as President of the United States? He handpicked Attorney General Bill Barr, okay? So why couldn't he have had a conversation with Bill Barr? Hey, you know what? We have some corruption going on in Ukraine. I want you to look into it. He could have said that, but he didn't. Now he brings up Bill Barr in that July 25th phone call, but then you have comments subsequently from the Justice Department. Oh, no, we don't know anything about this. We don't know anything about this. We don't know what's going on. You could have asked Mike Pompeo in the State Department to open up more diplomatic channels in this realm to go after a lot of the corruption issues that you're so concerned about. He handpicked Mike Pompeo. Handpicked Bill Barr. These are his guys. So what's he concerned with? What do you got to go to Giuliani for? And his associates, Lev Parnas and Fruman, both have been indicted by the FBI. Why you got to surround yourself with these shady characters, doing something that you clearly don't want anybody to see? If it was all above board, if it was a perfect phone call because you were undertaking perfect actions, then why wouldn't you have the Justice Department looking into this aggressively? Why wouldn't you have your State Department looking into this aggressively? Why did you have to work on some type of smear campaign to go after an ambassador, Marie Yovanovitch, who has served her country for 33 years, who during the impeachment trial in the House was applauded and congratulated by Democrats and Republicans alike and by other witnesses? You know, if Donald Trump, even if he's not man enough to pick up the phone and call her and say, thank you for your service, Madam Ambassador. I hear nothing but good things about you, but I want to go in a different direction here with Ukraine. So we're going to bring you back. We're going to relieve you of your duties. We're going to bring you back to the State Department here in Washington. We'll have some conversations and we'll find another post for you. But thank you for your service. All he had to say. And if he wasn't man enough to do that, which he clearly isn't, he could have picked up the phone and asked Mike Pompeo to do it. Because Mike Pompeo is his hand-picked guy. Not deep state. He hand-picked him. Okay? He could have called her and said the same exact thing. I am calling you, Madam Ambassador, on behalf of the President of the United States. Thank you for your service, blah, blah, blah. Didn't happen. And if that did happen, nobody would argue that that was in the President's power to do so. Nobody. Even Ambassador Yovanovitch, when she was testifying, said, of course the president could do that. No problem. Everybody understands this except Donald Trump, apparently. Not good enough. Has to listen to Rudy Giuliani and Lev Parnas, perhaps. Oh, she's bad-mouthing you, Donald. No good. No good. We got to get rid of her. Get rid of her. Somebody do it. Get rid of her. Got to go on a smear campaign. She's removed. And after the fact, she is still on the mind of Donald Trump because he brings her up in the July 25th phone call with President Zelensky. It's not enough to get this woman out. He's got to keep going after her. She was testifying. He's tweeting at her as she's testifying. Can't let it up. Do you think this is proper conduct of a president of the United States? I don't. And I'm sick and tired of it. It's one thing after the other. It's giving the military-industrial complex billions and billions of dollars. It's tax cuts for the upper echelons of society. And we know that's true, folks. And you know how we know that's true? Because if most of those tax cuts really went to the middle class, then why would the Trump administration be dangling and starting to tease the public with middle class tax cuts for the 2020 campaign? Wouldn't have to do it. If that's who you benefited 2 years ago with all of these tax cuts, then why would you now have to have a targeted middle class tax cut? Maybe because those individuals weren't targeted to begin with. It was the upper echelons of the income bracket. It was major corporations. It was banks now making out like the bandits that they are to fuel the stock market increase of a whole bunch of funny money. But don't worry, we have trillion-dollar deficits again. So where are my Republican conservative fiscal hawks? Do you exist? No, you don't. Trade wars? Where's my free traders? You don't exist. Reining in government spending? Well, we have trillion-dollar deficits. Clearly that's not happening. The Republican Party is a sham. It's a sham. And now they are bowing at the altar of Donald J. Trump. And for what reason, I don't know. Other than that they're afraid that he's going to tweet at them, that they're afraid that his base is going to get all wild and crazy and go after them. I don't know what it is. But something is amiss. Something is very much amiss. That this guy, Donald Trump, can become president, do a whole host of things that are the polar opposite as to what the conservative Republican Party has been arguing for decades, if not generations. And they're fine with it. They're fine with it. Trillion-dollar deficits, we don't care. Trade wars, we don't care. If President Obama did what Donald Trump is accused of, imagine what would be taking place. Just imagine what would be taking place. This is the hypocrisy. This is the partisanship that has to stop. And one party is going to have to be the one that rises above it. One party is going to have to stand up and say enough's enough. The Republicans want to lambast. They want to go after the Democrats. Fine. Go after them. But guess what? Guess what? Don't justify your poor and incompetent behavior by pointing to theirs. Rise above it. Just like Donald Trump. He has every opportunity in the world when he tweets or gets in front of those cameras to say something that can unite this country. But 9.9 out of 10 times, it's something that further divides this country. It's something that continues to poke the bear, poke somebody in the eye, poke them in the side, elicit that type of response, that divisiveness. He has a moral obligation as the commander-in-chief, as the president of the United States, to unite this country. Now, some people might disagree with that, but that is what a leader is supposed to do. A leader is not supposed to divide the ranks. A house divided cannot stand. We were warned by our founding fathers once again. Once again, the wisdom and prudence of our founders. Do not splinter off into political parties. They knew what was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. That's all. Well, here we are, folks, and it's only January of 2020. Unbelievable. Federal Reserve continues to blow bubbles. President couldn't be happier, although he could be if they went negative, but we'll see how happy you are when we have negative interest rates. We have the impeachment process continuing to take place. This thing could potentially be wrapped up next week if the Republicans have enough votes to block any future witnesses. This will be a trial without witnesses. This will be a trial without documents. Does that sound like a trial to you? All I'm asking for is the truth, the whole truth. All I'm asking for is justice. Whichever side it comes down on, I'm fine with. If there's exculpatory evidence, I will come to the defense of this president, but I have yet to see it. I have yet to hear it. And it's not so much me coming to the defense of Donald Trump as much as it is me coming to the defense of Jerry Nadler or Adam Schiff or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. I am doing my best to come to the side of the defense of the truth. Period. I don't care what the color of the person's skin is, what their last name is, if they got a pencil neck. I don't care. If their skin's orange, I don't care. All I'm asking for is the truth. And that's why any comments I get or anything, you're not going to be able to pin me down. Because I don't play this hypocrisy BS game. I don't play this partisan politic game. I am about the truth. I am about justice. I am about peace. I'm about love. I am about free market capitalism. And when you can root yourself in those types of principles and that type of philosophy, then you're consistent. You're consistent. And more likely than not, you're going to be consistently right. Because that's what you're seeking. You're seeking righteousness. You're seeking the morality of it all. You're not seeking political bonus points. You're not seeking to rub elbows with the power brokers in Washington, D.C. You're just simply searching out the truth. And if that's too much of an ask in this day and age, in this country, then our republic ceases to exist. And what difference does any of this make? It's only January, folks. Please like, share, subscribe, leave your comments. We do love hearing from you. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Corritis. Godspeed.